Let's start with a little geography. We understand from our book that the three Arabias are roughly rocky Arabia on the northwest near Jordan and Sinai. We've got the more fertile and populous area of Arabia. And as you see up on this map, that's where Mecca is. So this is going to be the easiest place for agriculture and for towns and infrastructures to develop. And then you have the desert, right? That's going to be the driest and prohibitive of good community building. Now, when you think of Mecca, you might think of a town with a marketing plan, because the famous black stone from a meteorite fell near here, right? It was understood to be a powerful or a chosen place. The Kaaba, the cube, was built around the stone to house it, and the animistic beliefs of the region were concentrated at the cube, the Kaaba, where veneration of the regional spirits occurred. Right? So if you get, this is one of those really interesting things, how places become important places. The meteorite creates a stir and a story. And think about this oral culture and how important a story like something falling out of the sky would have been. How portentous it might be. And the idea that that stone then begins to make a place where one might concentrate the ritual devotion to powerful things. That another set, let me see, I believe they are over here. Then in the region at the time, so along with that stone, you might have found images of three goddesses: Allat, a mother goddess; Manat, fate; and Al-Uzza, power. So that here we've got our power, we've got our mother, we've got our fate, as also elements of that early Kaaba culture. Now, as a comparative religions class, I want you to think seriously for a minute about what it means for a religion to have three daughters of Allah worshipped. Are any of us living in a culture where three female symbols of the divine power are central? Have we got a trinity of females anywhere? That makes for a very interesting background to Islam. And I always feel nervous about closing off fate. So, but anyway, here we go. I'll just minimize you. That makes me feel better. All right, here we are back to these guys. If you understand Mecca, nestled down near the coast, in the intersection of major markets, we've got Africa, we've got Europe to the north and west, we've got Persia and Asia to the east. But facing, so here's little Mecca down here. It's got these major markets out there. But here it is in the island of Arabia. Look at the water that surrounds this place. That's not the easiest way to transport your goods. So, facing the relative isolation of the Arabian island, Mecca had developed a strong regional standing as a place of pilgrimage. That way you might understand better what happens when Muhammad starts getting his messages in the 700s regarding his insistence on monotheism, and when he cleared the icons at the Kaaba, why he was not popular with the leaders of the city, and hence his being run out of Mecca and up to Medina in the early part of his evolution as a prophet. These guys had a marketing plan. They were a site of pilgrimage. The more divinities you've got in the cube, the more people you might be drawing down here, drawing across here, getting them to stop in their boat here. So that it was a really good place to have had that meteorite fall and to take advantage of that, to capitalize on your centrality as a place of finding religious figures of power. Muhammad comes in, clears out the cube, clears out the Kaaba, and he gets run out of town. Buddy, you are messing up the worldview here. We've got a good thing going. So communities grow based on their economies. And if you consider the island of Arabia wedged between African resources and markets and the Mediterranean and European resources and markets and the Asian resources and markets, it will bring you to Khadija, Muhammad's first wife. She came from a successful business family and ran an extensive trading business when she married Muhammad. So that gives him, he's got his tie into, it would be maybe in Wyoming, like being part of a trucking family successful business. All right, so marrying her was a good thing. And then if you've got a religious message and you already have this infrastructure of trade, then you have relationships along which your message can be spread. Now, let's look at genealogy to put these people into some kinship and geographical stories to help keep these tumblers in place. If we can't give Islam some stories that give you a narrative line, it's unlikely that you're going to hold on to very much of this. So let's go to the family story. Here we see at the top is the Quraysh line. From the Quraysh line, it breaks here, providing the Umayyad and the Umayyad caliphs. And over here, we get Muhammad and one of Muhammad's uncles, Al-Abbas, is father to the Abbasid Caliph. Now, here we go. There's Muhammad. This genealogy doesn't even pretend to include Khadija, his wife. But if we had Muhammad, then we would have Khadija. And then here is their daughter, Fatima. And we see Fatima married to Ali here. And their two sons, Hassan and Hussein. And those of you who have a vivid recollection of the war in Iraq will know of another famous person who named his two sons Hassan and Hussein. And important here with the Umayyads, we see Uthman over here, the third Caliph, and that from the Umayyad clan you get the early Umayyad Caliphs and the later Umayyad Caliphs. So that tells you there is some running power in that family. Over here on Muhammad's side, we see the Abbasids starting as off from his uncle's family. And in this genealogy, we see Ali is listed as the first imam. That tells us about who wrote this genealogy. This is a Shia genealogy, making sure we know that Ali is the first imam. So we're going to set that genealogy aside. And now let's think about the Umayyads who were followed by the Abbasids. So here, let's go to Umayyads. This is evidence of how well Khadija's network and the entire trading region was worked in those years of the four rightly guided caliphs as the Umayyad Caliphate grows. And so we have, there we are, here's Mecca, and we have the Umayyads heading out all the way, they're Spain. They're getting up, and if you did not know that there were Muslims in Spain, in 1492, not only were Jews exiled from Spain, but so were Muslims. So that's a very interesting piece of European history. And if you travel the south of Spain, you will see a lot of what is called the Moorish influence. It's the Muslim influence in architecture. And heading all the way across Iran. And it's going to be centered right here in the center of this. I hope this gives you some of that narrative picture. About the fulcrum point across this whole arc is going to be Damascus, which is where the Umayyads have their central power. And that's a good place to have it, right? You can swing west and swing east from there. When we get to the Abbasid Caliphate, the center of power is going to move from Damascus to Baghdad. So from this coastal area over here to Baghdad as a reflection of the greater emphasis on Persian, Iranian, and the move to Ali and a lineage. The Abbasids, we are thinking Shia, the move to a slightly more to the east emphasis and more of the influence that becomes the Shia, which will remain in Iran and Iraq as the central areas of Shia Islam. So now the center of power has moved to Baghdad. You see over here, the Umayyads of Spain are still written on the map, but the actual control of the Caliphate is no longer extending that far. It is getting more centralized, nevertheless, a huge territory. Well, I hope that little lecture on with some of the geography and genealogy helps you appreciate the early years and these major tumblers of history.